Hello everyone, with the Jamaica here. Welcome to this updated video on the weather across Jamaica and the Caribbean. It is Tuesday evening, February 28th, 2023. Now before we jump into it, please ensure that you guys like the video, share it, subscribe and tap notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I post a brand new video. Also feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section letting me know what the weather has been like in your area recently. Also feel free to ask any weather related question that you might have about the future of the weather in your specific area. I respond to all comments and I really live for this stuff. Alright, so let us take a look at the significant feature map across the Atlantic for this evening. We can see that we have a cold front right there to the north of the main development region, stretching all the way down to the north of the eastern Caribbean. And for the most part, high pressure ridge is dominating the entire Atlantic, sending easterly trade winds across the main development region into the Caribbean. And if we actually take a look at the visible satellite images before the sun went down, we can see those clouds associated with that cold front to the north of the main development region as well as to the north of the eastern Caribbean, most of which are fading at this time. And we can also see some clouds moving from east to west across the Caribbean, all courtesy of that high pressure ridge. We'll be talking more about that later on. Let's focus our attention on what happened across Jamaica for today. Before the sun went down, the visible close-up satellite images showed some amount of buildup of clouds across inland areas of some central and western parishes in Jamaica. Not much in the way of rainfall was brought about by these clouds. There's a lot of dry air across the area these days, so we don't have a lot of rainfall taking place. As relates to the temperatures right now, we can see that we have 25 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 25 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay. And if we actually take a look at the temperature forecast for tomorrow, both the Euro and the GFS are showing that we have some amount of blues in and around the island for tomorrow. This map is showing 18th on Wednesday. When we calculate that, that's 1 p.m. on Wednesday. We know that the blues represent some amount of below average temperatures, so it could be, let's say, 1 degree Celsius below average. And what's the average temperatures for the month of February? About 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And when we calculate that, that's about 30 degrees Celsius. So we should be expecting anywhere from 29 to 30 degrees Celsius for tomorrow. As it relates to the dry air map, we can see on the keys at the bottom, we have a lot of reds. That's indicative of a lot of dry air stretching all the way from the main development region, from Africa all the way into the Caribbean. Lots of reds across Jamaica right there. Lots of dry air. If we actually take a look at the Saharan dust map, this is showing 2 p.m. on Wednesday. We can see some amount of browns right there across portions of the Windward Islands. So let's say maybe Barbados, sections of Grenada, sections of Tobago and Trinidad might get in on some of those browns associated with some hazy skies, Saharan dust. Maybe even Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname and French Guiana might get in some of that as well. If we actually take a look at the wave forecast for tomorrow, both the Euro and the GFS are showing a lot of blues, and that's indicative of anything less than 2-meter wave height. So we don't have much in the way of high wave heights across the waters around Jamaica for tomorrow. So the fishermen and the marine interest should be having a grand time out at sea. This is all due in part by the winds that we're going to be getting tomorrow. We can see more of an easterly flow, anywhere from, let's say, 10 to 15 knots from the east across the island. And we have consensus with both the Euro and the GFS, and we know that when we have consensus like this, the chances of it actually happening are much higher. Not to mention consensus associated with the precipitation forecast. Both maps are showing 7 a.m. on Wednesday. We can see for the most part Jamaica is in the clear. We don't have much blues that represent rainfall across the island, and that's what it's going to be like for majority of the day tomorrow. Clear blue skies, no rainfall whatsoever. Even when we look at the accumulated precipitation forecast, we don't see much of anything. Lots of dry weather to start the month of March on. This map is showing all the rainfall that we're expected to get from now up until 3Z on Thursday. When we calculate that, that's all the rainfall from now, Tuesday evening, up until 10 p.m. on Wednesday. So we don't have anything to get at lots of dry weather taking place. Alright, so that's it for the forecast across Jamaica. Let's talk briefly about the rest of the Caribbean. So for the most part, we don't have anything across majority of the Greater Antilles, including the Bahamas, Cuba, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Hispaniola. We don't have much across portions of Mexico, Belize, Honduras, or Nicaragua. Majority of the clouds are across right there, across portions of the northeastern section of South America. So areas maybe like eastern Venezuela, portions of Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana getting in on some amount of clouds that's bringing some amount of rainfall across those spots. No rainfall at all can be seen across portions of Puerto Rico, the Leeward or the Windward Islands at all. And those are just the satellite images that show the cloud cover. Let's take a look at the Doppler radar images. These Doppler radar images are actually showing the rainfall that was received across the Leeward Islands from 2 p.m. up until this recording hour. So we could see that we had some amount of greens that represent some amount of isolated rainfall across portions of Guadeloupe for this afternoon into the early evening. Majority of the northeastern Caribbean islands were in the clear. So Puerto Rico, the US and British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, St. Kitts, St. John's, Anguilla, Barbuda, Antigua, not getting in on much of anything at this time. And if we actually take a look at the Barbados radar, even the Barbados radar is in the clear. Don't have much of anything across the region. Don't have much of anything across St. Vincent, Dominica, Martinique, not even Tobago or Trinidad getting in on much of anything at this time. But right at the southern portions is where we see all of those greens that represent light to moderate rainfall. So sections of Guyana, French Guiana, Suriname getting in on some amount of rainfall. All of those rainfall associated with clouds brought about by the intertropical convergent zone, which is where the winds from the southern hemisphere meet the winds from the northern hemisphere and formulate some amount of cloud cover right there. If we actually take a look at the temperature forecast for tomorrow, both the Euro and the GFS are showing some amount of blues right there across portions of the Leeward Islands that represent below normal temperatures. However, we can see some amount of above normal temperatures across portions of the Windward Islands, anywhere from, let's say, Dominica southward. Might get in on some of that right there. And we can also see some above normal temperatures across portions of the northern sections of South America, so Venezuela, Colombia, maybe even portions of the ABC Islands getting in on some of that. Portions of Panama getting in on some blues that represent below average temperatures. You can see a lot of above normal temperatures right now across portions of the United States, Cuba, the Bahamas, as well as portions of Mexico and Belize and Honduras right there. If we actually take a look at the Saharan dust forecast for tomorrow, just as stated, Jamaica is in the clear. Majority of the dust is situated across portions of the Windward Islands as well as the northeastern section of South America for tomorrow, 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So Barbados and anywhere southwest of there. So let's say St. Vincent, Grenada, Tobago, Trinidad, eastern Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana will be getting in on some amount of hazy skies or dry air for tomorrow. We can see for the most part the highest wave heights are going to be right there to the waters in the across the main development region, as well as the waters to the east of the United States. For the most part, the entire Caribbean, stretching all the way from the eastern Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico, will be getting less than 2 meter wave heights for tomorrow, and that is due to the lack of strong wind that we've been receiving, let's say in majority of January or the first half of February. Right now we're getting mainly 10 to 20 knot winds. The strongest winds for tomorrow seem to be right there to the north of Colombia, represented by all of those yellows, and that could be representing 25 knot winds, not to mention sections of Belize as well as the Yucatan Peninsula, northern Belize that is, could get in on some amount of stronger winds tomorrow. As it relates to the precipitation forecast for the Caribbean on both the Euro and the GFS, this is as dry as it has ever been in a long time. This is as dry as it gets. We don't have much in the way of rainfall to show. We can see some amount of colors right there across portions of the Central America area, so Costa Rica, by getting on some amount of rainfall. We can see some consensus right there. Where else do we have consensus? We see a lot of consensus right there across portions of eastern Venezuela, as well as portions of Guyana. So we can even see up to a half an inch of rainfall, or maybe even up to an inch of rainfall from now up until 10 p.m. on Wednesday. Everywhere seems to be getting little to no rainfall, all the way from the eastern Caribbean stretching towards the western Caribbean. If we take a look at the western portion of the basin, so Mexico, Belize, both maps are not showing much of any form of rainfall consensus. So we're definitely in the dry season at this time. We're in the peak month, February. So please try to take necessary precautions so that you're not affected drastically by the meteorological or hydrological drought. Conserve water today. Alright, so let us take a look at the names for the hurricane season for 2023, which I'm sure that we're not going to be exceeding. Majority of these names came from the 2017 list, if we actually can remember. Stretches from Arlene to Whitney. You can pause it right now and see if you recognize any of the other names, or maybe if your name is right there. Let us focus our attention on this tweet that was brought about by Tyler Stanfield. If you don't know Tyler Stanfield, he's a meteorologist at the National Weather Service in the United States. He's one of the people that you need to follow on Twitter if you're not already following them. He posted recently stating it appears the end is near for the multi-year La Nina. So we've been having a La Nina for a long period right now. He says Nina 3.4 is rapidly approaching neutral conditions as subsurface of equatorial Pacific warms. With realization of a strong westerly wind burst via MGO in March, this would likely prime Enzo for El Nino to develop by fall. When is fall? September, October, November 2023. What does he mean by Enzo? What does he mean by Nino 3.0? The Nino 3.0 is right there. Right there across the eastern to the central Pacific. Right there to the west of South America. What happens when all of this water warms? We're going to be having a lot of upward motion right there. That is what we refer to as the El Nino. And if we have upward motion right there, we're going to have more buildup of clouds, more rainfall, more storms forming across that area. And in turn, this causes a lot of wind shear across the Caribbean and maybe even as far as the main development region. And this in turn prohibits storm development. Not to mention rainfall development, especially if there's more focus across portions of the eastern Pacific due to an El Nino. And if you actually take a look at these line graphs that are making predictions for the forecast for the El Nino, he even made a post highlighting what the 2017 season was like. Even although it actually failed, he's stating that there's a high chance of it not failing in 2023. Because there was an El Nino that was predicted for 2017, but that actually ended up failing and turning more to a La Nina by the time the peak of the hurricane season came around. But he's stating that this one that is being forecasted for 2023, there's a high chance of it not failing. And what would happen if we have an El Nino, lots of warm water? And if we actually take a look at the precipitation forecast, we see a lot of greens that represent rainfall, not to mention storm development across the eastern to central Pacific, and a lot of browns that represent little to no rainfall across the Caribbean. And if we already have a drought going on right now in February in the Caribbean, and then there's gonna be less rainfall in the peak months of the hurricane season due to a drought brought about by the El Nino, and that's a bad thing, a very bad thing. So we need to ensure that we're conserving water and taking necessary precautions. Any rainfall that we get, try to conserve as much as possible, so that by the time the peak of the hurricane season comes around, hopefully this doesn't pan out. Hopefully we don't actually get an El Nino. Hopefully we're not that drastically affected. Either way, this is where the sea surface temperatures are right now. You can see a lot of oranges that represent above normal sea surface temperatures, especially across portions of the Gulf of Mexico, the eastern United States. You can see some patches of whites right there that represent not cooler than average but not above normal temperatures across portions of the Caribbean and the main development region. And that's not what we want to see if we actually want to get some rainfall across the Caribbean. We actually want to see more oranges across our latitude, the Caribbean and the main development region, if we actually want to get some amount of rainfall, but not necessarily the storms. We can also see right there that area to the west of South America that is starting to warm up. Remember, we had a strong La Nina for a time period. Now it's weakening. We have more of a weak La Nina still going at this time, but that is being eroded by a lot of warm water that is upwelling at this time. Let us take a look at the forecast for the month of March by the climate forecast system. For the month of March, we can see some amount of, let's say, average rainfall represented by the whites across portions of the Caribbean. We see more in the way of some amount of browns that represent below average rainfall. That's for the CFS. What about the CANSIPs? The CANSIPs are showing more whites, so average rainfall. And the CANSIPs is more in agreement with what the NMME model is showing as well. Some more whites. Hopefully, we have more of what the NMME as well as the CANSIPs is showing. Hopefully we'll have more of that for the month of March rather than what the climate forecast system is showing with all of those browns that represents below average rainfall for the month of March. And if we actually take a look at what the climate forecast system is showing, they recently posted this map today for the 28th of February, issued by the forecaster Baron Diaran. And he made a forecast highlighting that for week 2, for March 8th to the 14th, majority of the Caribbean right there should be in the clear. So we don't have anything to worry about. We don't have any above normal rainfall. We don't have any below normal rainfall or temperatures right there for the Caribbean, even stretching into March 15th to the 21st as well. Let's hope it stays that way, just like what the CANSIPs and the NMME models are showing. If we actually take a look at what the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum is showing for the month of March, we can see that majority of the Caribbean is in the clear. We don't have any browns, we don't have any blue colors that represent above normal rainfall. However, we can see some amount of brown starting to appear across the Caribbean if you actually take a look at the longer range, June, July, August, which would be in consensus with what the El Nino forecast is showing. And usually when we have an El Nino forecast, we have less rainfall across the Caribbean. Let's hope this doesn't actually pan out, because that would be very bad for the Caribbean. If we actually take a look at the next 10 days for the precipitation forecast across the Caribbean by the Euro and the GFS, these maps are showing all the rainfall that's expected across the Caribbean from now up until 1 p.m. on Friday, March 10th. And if we actually take a look at both maps, we can see that for the most part, majority of the rainfall is right there across portions of the United States, not to mention portions of South America, so Colombia, portions of Costa Rica, Venezuela, Guyana. We don't have much in the way of rainfall across the Caribbean at all. We have more of up to, let's say, an inch of rainfall the most across portions of the Leeward Islands on the GFS. The Euro is not that robust at all about the rainfall. So for the first 10 days of March, it seems to be very, very dry. Hopefully this doesn't pan out. Hopefully we get some amount of rainfall, some amount of measurable rainfall that does some amount of dent in the dry weather that we've been receiving. Alright, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching.